if it's in the game, it's in the game. To me, was hey, it's game. Game means more than just the 2.5 hours you play.
Yo, Munir. Creativity. The happiest guys on the internet. What's going on, brother? Yo, Munir. Yo, Rob.
Yo, Glenn.
Yo, what's up, fellas?
Yo, Munir. It's nice to see you.
It's fantastic to have G Money. So Yo Money, Yo G Money, on our show. Welcome to Yo Munir, a show celebrating practice and creativity, hosted by the happiest guys on the internet. I'm Munir Haddad, co-founder of award-winning advertising agency Kiosk and a firm believer in stakeholder capitalism. And
Amazing.
Rob?
Yeah, I'm Rob Haddad, a former producer and director who spent his career in sports, media, and technology. Munir, who's in the room?
On today's show, we're welcoming a very special guest, Glenn Chin. Glenn Chin has spent more than 30 years building some of the most recognizable brands in sports, gaming, and tech. Glenn started at Electronic Arts in 1992 in entry-level customer support and worked his way up to VP of Marketing and Creative Development. Along the way, creating the Madden Bowl, the very first NFL meets celebrity gaming competition, helping shape what EA Sports would become. From EA, he went to Nike as global brand director, where he led the relaunch of Nike basketball, the original launch of Nike Plus, and signature campaigns for LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, and the 2008 USA Olympic team in Beijing. Since then, he's been CMO at Digital Trends, led global marketing for Niantic's NBA All-World, and co-founded the esports platform Challengers Uprising, which extended to Unified in 2021. Today, he's the founder of Most Prolific, where he's building the next generation of sports gaming IP. He's a Brand Week Guerrilla Marketer of the Year, alongside your co-host.
Hey.
And one of the most interesting brand minds you'll hear from in the universe. Glenn, welcome to the show.
Wow. That was pretty good. Lots of stories behind every single thing you said. A lot of them involving you guys too.
Hey. 27 years in the making.
Happy to be here. Psyched what you guys are doing, and honored to hang out with you guys for a little bit.
Thank you. We love to hear about people and how they came up. It helps us with thinking about creativity and what was Glenn like? What was the family?
Oh yeah, okay. Well, I'll take you back to the Bay. I'll take you back to San Francisco, where I was born, and the fifth generation San Franciscan. So my family's been in San Francisco for a long time. Mom and dad, born and raised there, went to high school there, and went to City College. And my grandmother's family certainly there since the 1850s. So born in San Francisco, raised, I guess what we know now as Silicon Valley, Redwood City, California, down on the Peninsula, about 20 miles south of San Francisco. And obviously, growing up as a proud Chinese American kid with my roots in San Francisco, grew up down on the Peninsula, went to a really diverse high school, which I didn't really realize kind of wasn't the norm, as I kind of went out into the world. And certainly there are a handful of Asian kids there, but very heavy Hispanic. There are Black kids, Polynesian kids, both Tongan and Samoans, and you better know the difference, right? And just all types of different kids, social economic too. I mean, thinking about just observing, looking at the bus that would come in, or the city bus, or the parking lot, which was lifted trucks or BMWs or lowriders. And this is early 80s. So, that's kind of where I'm from. And the cars are different, the kids are different, but everyone was kind of learning from each other and getting to see, different things at that age, especially music and sports.
And did you guys play games as a family? Did you guys have a chance to connect on that level?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, I was born in San Francisco. Both my grandparents lived there. So we were suburban Redwood City Peninsula kids Monday through Friday, but on Saturdays, whether we liked it or not, and it was awesome, but as a teenager, you probably didn't want to, we'd head up to San Francisco for the day. So I was a city kid on Saturdays. And my mom's side of the family, there are two uncles and cousins. So we basically have this giant dinner every other Saturday because we'd go to my other grandparents' house on the other Saturday. So yeah, lots of food, lots of battling for food, lots of positioning about where you're gonna sit. Like where you sat was purely hierarchical from how old you were. So my grandfather sat at the head of the table, my grandmother, the aunts and uncles, and the kids are shoved down at the other end of the table. So 2 dishes of everything my grandfather would make. And if you sat next to my grandma, you were cool because she would just dish you up and you're good. You could have a relaxing meal. If you're down at the other end with the rest of my cousins, it was a free-for-all, right? Like you learn to eat fast. I learned how to use chopsticks probably the wrong way, only because I just used them to survive and just get what I could get, right? So
yeah.
So there's a lot of bonding and fun over food and stuff like that. But I think when you talk about games, like I distinctly remember all the adults after dinner would start playing cards.
Yeah.
Right? And they'd be playing, penny, nickels, whatever, right? And playing different types of poker and as you got older, and older I'm meaning like 7 or 8.
Right.
You'd come out from like where the kids were playing and you'd come up to the table and be like, "Can I play?" And my aunts and uncles and my grandfather had always like, "Got your own pennies and nickels?"
Yeah,
like,
we'll take them.
yeah, you can play. So, yeah, there was definitely kind of competition that way and gamesmanship and what have you at a very young age with my family and just kind of seeing how they interacted with each other around card games.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Rob and I talk about that all the time because we grew up with a big family as well and a lot of card playing and a lot of sending the kids outside, don't come back till till evening, and you had to kind of make your own entertainment. And we talk about how that is a framework for creativity, for personal interaction, for negotiation, like you're talking about negotiating. And these are skills that we need in life, right?
Oh, I would say 1,000%. I mean, just thinking about going up to the city on a Saturday as a Redwood City suburban kid and going to the playground down the street from my grandparents' house, and like it's a different world. So you got to learn to navigate it. You got to learn to stand up for yourself because there's a lot of kids there, and the kids are city kids.
Yeah.
So learning to do that, and then I had my aunt, my favorite aunt, my mom's sister lived in Berkeley. So we'd go to every Thanksgiving over there, and we'd go visit all the time. And certainly from the Peninsula across the Bay Bridge to Berkeley, for people who aren't familiar with the Bay Area, it's probably like a little over an hour away. But when you're a little kid, it seems like it's, very far. It's like a road trip.
Yeah, different.
Right? But hanging out in Berkeley, which Berkeley, and the East Bay, especially Berkeley, is a very diverse place with lots of different types of people, and it's right next to the University of California, Berkeley, and certainly navigating that world too was awesome because as we got older, to your point, you get to my aunt's house and the adults are talking and they're like, "Hey, get out of here until dinner." So you'd walk 2 blocks away and go to the park. And then, I'm with my cousins and, start playing pickup, hoop, and, I remember distinctly one time my cousin was really good. She was a really good high school girls player, and I remember in middle school, like girls are bigger than guys then,
Yeah.
right? And she was like a tough girl, but she wasn't used to the environment there, and she was like really cowering. And I was like, "What are you doing?
Right, you're
get
good.
Get after it! Like you'll smoke these guys, right?" But yeah, I think certainly, just growing up in the Bay Area and having the family structure that we did, and wherever all the other relatives were, we got to experience different environments and cultures because.
Yeah.
My other uncle, they lived, when we moved out of San Francisco and went to Redwood City, they went to a place called Cupertino, right? And Cupertino was like orchards. We'd ride our bikes through orchards and stuff, right? So that was the heart of, obviously that is the heart of Silicon Valley now.
Yeah. Oh my God. Amazing.
Was there a moment in your career or your life where the culture that you grew up in as a Chinese American connected you to somebody else where you could relate on a totally different level because you inherently had that cultural connection?
You know what's interesting? You say that, Rob, because while certainly on Saturdays there are lots of Asian American kids, Chinese American kids around. Like in Redwood City, there were like probably 5 families, right? My elementary school, like maybe one other kid who was, Japanese, Hawaiian, and the other Asian kids were my brother and my sister, right?
Yeah.
And so not really, not until my senior year in high school, I was invited to play on a Japanese American Asian League basketball team made up of all high school varsity players in the Bay Area or on the Peninsula in San Jose, which, in the early 80s, I mean, I'm basically Jeremy Lin, right? There's no other Asian kids, right?
Right.
that are playing. So that was like so cool for me. That was like the first time in my life really that I was around a lot of other Asian kids. And to your point, I learned a lot about my identity and just kind of growing up and being around, other Asian kids, whether they're Korean or Japanese or Chinese, Filipino. Yeah. I was also kind of a little racially ambiguous when it came to hoops, so I would play in any league anyone asked me to.
I'm thinking specifically of a story, and I know you guys have stories like this.
Yeah.
I'm standing on the line at the Staples Center before NBA All-Star in 2018, I think it was. And I happened to be on the VIP line. But there was another line that you didn't know existed because nobody was standing in it because people were just walking past you. And that was the real VIP line because DJ Khaled was walking by. And he had his head in his phone. He wasn't talking to anybody. And I saw him walk by and I was like, Marhaba, Sham Tamo. And he stopped in his tracks, picked his head up, spun around, dapped me up like this, gave me a hug, turned around and kept walking. And the people I were with was like, what the hell just happened? What did you say? And I was just like, yo, what's up? What's good?
Yeah.
And it was just this moment in time where had I not been an Arab American and could relate to him on that level, that would have never happened.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about all the different people that have come across your path in your career, from games to sports, where maybe there was a moment like that for you too, where you just kind of connected because you knew you could connect on that level.
Yeah, I do think along the way, as time went on, certainly, always grateful for the Filipino love because, growing up in the Bay and certainly big Filipino community out of Daly City and South City, it's kind of to the DJs in hip hop is the baseball players to the Dominican. Like they're great DJs out of Daly City. But I always get the Filipino love just because of my father had a little darker complexion, and people always thought we were Filipino, and happy to get the love from anybody, right? But I would say the one thing that I was happy about, literally, and it was way after a lot of the EA Sports and Nike and whatnot, was it was literally the Jeremy Lin story, right? And following him as, I was like, whoa, there's a starting point guard at Palo Alto High School, which is kind of one of our teams that we played growing up, and you always kind of recognize that, like, oh, that's cool. Oh, he's Northern California Player of the Year. Wow, I guess he's got some game. Oh, they beat Mater Dei, which is like a powerhouse in Southern California. They beat them in the state finals, and he gets MVP. Like, whoa, this kid's good. Where's he going? Where's he going? And I, on some level, obviously, he's way better than I ever was. But, relating like, whoa, okay, well, cool. Asian American point guards getting after it. But when he did graduate from Harvard, I did reach out to him, and we made him a custom PlayStation because I heard he played games, and we got to know each other a little bit on that level and chatted a lot and texted, and that was well before Linsanity on that night. But certainly I think along the ways there have been folks that I like to give props and kind of the unspoken chin nod, which is kind of the universal, wherever you connect, you don't even have to say anything. You just, and that's probably with somebody that you guys know, Darren Matsubara, Mats.
Yep. Wow.
Right. So from those Asian leagues, he was a couple years younger than me, and I kind of do remember him balling out, and he went on to play college basketball in Southern California at Cal State Northridge, and really was Jeremy Lin before Jeremy Lin at that level.
Yeah.
And we reconnected when I was at EA Sports, and Munir was there, and I'm sure we'll get to that, but we built a great thing together in early AAU basketball, and having one of the first kind of corporate entities being EA Sports be part of that world. It was a connection between me and Mats that met years ago, kind of through that Asian League basketball.
I was going to say, we worked together at Electronic Arts at EA Sports, and this is we can get to that, but so many interesting people, full stop, regardless of where they come from. How do you go about aggregating interesting people? Like, people love speaking with you, but you have a collection of incredibly interesting, creative people that do things and get things done. How does that happen?
It's interesting. People have asked me that before, and it was never really about chasing a network or networking, so to speak. Like, I didn't really, even growing up, didn't even know what that meant, right? And I do think it goes back to Redwood City and the way I grew up, right? And so I think just being really curious about weaving myself through adolescence and being in this world of lifted trucks and BMWs and lowriders and what have you, that I've always been curious about people, and whether that was a conscious thought or not. I would bounce between my basketball world, which had a certain demographic, and growing up in the Bay, skate and surfing, which had a different demographic and tribe and its own, now as we're older, knowing how to kind of break that down. But when you're a kid, you inherently know that the worlds are different. So being really curious and really just trying to figure out how to get things done, and then reaching out and just not being scared to do it, and just say, hey, these folks professionally are really trying to sell product or create relationships with a similar consumer.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to reach out and see what's up. Like, how are they doing? Right. So early on, especially at EA, those early marketing jobs, and all of a sudden handed the keys to, the basketball product that we named NBA Live. It was like, okay, like, obviously our consumer, people love our games, or we want to love our games. They like other things besides video games, right? They love sneakers, they love music, right? We want to be part of that routine and activity. So I remember literally building a little advisory board, just my advisory board of people that I met, that I heard that love video games, but maybe they were launching NOS back in the day, right? And actually, my friend James Andrews was that person, and we got introduced by, of all people, and again, it goes back to people loving the product. We got introduced by Money B, aka Ronnie Brooks, who went to Palo Alto High School, and he was is in Digital Underground, kind of the great early 90s hip hop band. But it was like that. It was like connecting just socially, right? Like, oh, you love video games, you should meet this person, right? And I think it's just being authentic and just being real to who you are, and being genuinely curious about what other people do, that I think I've been really lucky. And obviously the product, people love the product, so they're more than happy to talk to somebody who works at the company and brand that they love. So that's how that happened a lot. It was just kind of a social web of like, oh, you should talk to so and so, or just meeting people along the way who happen to have a platform, whether it was behind the scenes in music, fashion, or sports, or they were the actual talent.
Yeah, I am always, the be curious is something that you have always had and instilled around those around you in a very positive way. And as somebody that's worked with you and known you now for a very long time, I've always admired your capacity to create something meaningful out of nothing. And we did allude to something, so I'll tell a little story that you can fill in the blanks for. So when Glenn and I started to work together, we were in it wasn't Foster City, it was
Redwood Shores.
San Mateo. We were still in San
Mateo.
Mateo. We were at 900
Mateo, that's
Fashion
right.
Avenue. We're at Fashion Island. Anyway.
Yes.
But we were moving into the new building in Redwood Shores, and they had built, probably because you whispered in somebody's ear, but they had built a full court basketball court with the bleachers that you would, pull out. So there were these stadium bleachers. And Glenn, you came into my cubicle and you're like, wouldn't it be great if we had a high school All-American game in our new basketball court? And you then said, there are these things that happen. There's like Marathon Oil and Athletes in Action, and every college basketball team is allowed 2 exhibition games. Wouldn't it be great if one of those exhibition games was EA Sports? And that was the start. It was just like I'm going to toss this little kernel out and see what happens. And I don't know if you knew that I was going to do that was like a hook, but from that moment on, I'm like, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think a lot of it comes to having really solid strategic direction too, right? We kind of knew the brand was built around, obviously, real sports games for real sports fans, which kind of turned into Jeff Odiorn's, classic copywriting. If it's in the game, it's in the game, right? What happens on the field is going to be reflective in the game. And certainly a year after that launched, I came into the marketing team from QA. And my point of view around sports, having played it and loved it and being around it, and I'm in my late 20s at this time, was if it's in the game, it's in the game, to me. was, hey, it's game. Game means more than just the 2.5 hours you play. What happens between the lines? Game happens, 24/7, 365, right? The game happens in the off season, right? At summer league. The game happens during free agency. The game happens when the guys walk through the tunnel and their stylists are, putting great gear on them. Like, that's a game, right? So the elasticity of the brand and game was a platform that I, was like, hey, we can get into that too. And at that time, we said we wanted to be a top 5 sports brand, not
Yes.
not a top 5 video game brand, not the best sports video game brand, because, like, yeah, we're going to do that. We are that. Like, we want to go beyond that, right? And so building and putting your brand out there in a space that is real, right? And really kind of justifies and complements our virtual world that we're known for, right? It's like, hey, why not? Because those opportunities you mentioned for the exhibition teams, right? Like, yeah, it's Marathon Oil and Athletes in Action. There's not a corporate brand. There never has been a corporate brand because they actually banned the whole thing because of us, right? And
Right.
so I think the thing about that was, look, wouldn't it be great if we were on college campuses as a real team and we showed up to play Kentucky, UCLA, UNC, Duke, everybody? And we did.
Michigan. Yeah.
And we did. And not only did we do that, I remember our CEO, Larry Probst, was a huge basketball fan. And we had an opening night at Cal's new arena, Harmon, or the new one. And we played Cal. Packed out house, EA Sports uniforms made by Mark Echo.
Yes.
And
Shout out
they
to
won
Mark.
they won in overtime. It was great. It was like we were in the media, we were in the box score, we were a legit sports team. We played Cal. And I remember he came over to me during the game. He goes, "Glenn, this is great. Like, how much is this costing us?" And I had to admit to him that we actually get paid as a visiting team. And so after the game, I went down, the athletic director handed me a check for like $8,000. So we got 2.5 hours of branding, sports, media coverage, and $8,000. And I was like, yeah, but I'm putting this back into my budget, but all the stuff that you guys cut from it, because that's part of the creativity too. It's like they cut my budget. Like, how am I going to be able to do the stuff I want? It's like, oh, I guess we're going to do that. So anyway, fast forward, the NCAA, we did that for like 3 years. And at one point we had 8 teams, with each team having an 8-game schedule. The NCAA said, hey, this is getting out of hand. Some people were paying other teams a lot of money because maybe a guy would go play there. So they said, no more. I just think it's looking at what's available and what's going to be an amplifier for you, and not maybe I don't think we were naive. I just think we were just really bullish on our brand, and we were really bullish on not being afraid to fail. And I will give, Don Transeth a lot of credit, even when he took off, and was working in Europe, running marketing in Europe, he left behind the legacy and the empowerment of like, hey, if it's on brand, like, go for it.
Yeah.
Because there were just a lot of firsts that we did, but they were strategically sound. The execution was tight, but yeah, they hadn't been done before. But could have easily been squashed by an exec that just said,
Yes.
I don't get it. I don't get it. Like, we're not doing that. We make video games.
It was also this is about taking the assets that are around and leveraging them in again, on brand and appropriate manner. And we bolted onto that as well, the collegiate representatives. And so we had this program called EAU that was an internship program to bring engineers to EA, but we expanded that, put a logo onto it, and then made it a college representative program alongside the campuses that were going to be playing the physical team. And that relationship lasted all year. And it expanded then not just from the college products, but to every other product.
Absolutely.
Because there's a full cycle. And so again, like I had a small budget too, with as the college marketing guy at that time. So how do we leverage that smaller budget in a larger way? Was to say, well, we're gonna support all of you, and so you all want to pour money back into this, and the capacity then, and we had all those kids come to San Francisco for training.
A lot of them the first time they'd been on a plane. Right, and I think those sessions were great, where we really enabled them to do things we wanted them to do.
Yeah.
Right. I remember setting them off into San Francisco with rolls of EA Sports banners and rented video cameras that were like this big. They were huge. They're like on your shoulder, right? And things are on the list were like, hey, go up to a San Francisco police officer, hold up the banner, and all of you say EA Sports, it's in the game, right? And they were like, what? We're like, this is the stuff we want you to do on campus. Like, do it here. And then, we're going to all watch it together over pizza, right? And I loved that program, because it really, there's some superstars out of that group that came back to work at EA, and they went on to have great careers, and certainly, even the question of hustling and being creative with budget. Like, right. I split the cost with Echo, with our kind of major market street teams, because it was the same thing. It was like, look, we're talking to the same audience, right. So why not come to the table with great gear and games and throw pre-release parties, in these major markets along with artists, and then we're really part of the mix organically.
Yeah.
We at Major League Baseball, two things pop up when you're talking about owning the game. Major League Baseball, when I was there, really only had interest in owning capital B baseball. And it was really frustrating to those of us who were looking for other ways to expand the culture, because baseball was ubiquitous in this country. It was played outside of stadiums, in fields and parks and all over the country. And we were almost allergic to lowercase b baseball. And so when I hear you talking about owning the game as also synonymous for owning the culture and more than the sport, it warms my heart, because it's something that I look to with envy as a former marketer at Major League Baseball. But the other thing about being creative with budgets and access to them, it took me a while, but once I was finally in a position to be able to gain access to budget and get creative, I went right to the sponsorship team. And I said, hey, you guys have access to all of the money. Let's do some content together. We shouldn't be so reliant on the rights holders to license programming from us. Now, that's where the distribution was going. But we could find other places to get budget to produce programs from. And so Absolutely. It sounds similar, right, to you guys finding ways to find the budget to market something that you believed in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think at that time, you think about video games in the 90s and early 2000s, like it's getting mainstream. There's big checks going to the leagues now. The leagues are sitting up and saying, oh, you guys are probably a different category than, a koozie or a keychain, right? And I also think everybody really wanted to be part of that. Right. And so even the broadcasters, right, like TNT, for example, like before we had in-game advertising in the games on PlayStation 1, we were an advertiser with TNT on, of course, basketball and NBA. And, we went to them We had a great relationship with them, and we said, hey, our positioning is try to be broadcast basketball. We can do a little better because we can put the cameras wherever we want. But for right now, out of the gate on this new PlayStation platform, we can make it look great. So how about we put in some of your graphics? It'll look great. Some of your talent in the game, and you give us some more advertising dollars because at that time, we're a pretty scrappy brand.
Yeah.
And so someone leading basketball, you're like, okay, how do I get more money? How do I get more media dollars? Well, we got this great product. We got a great product that has a lot of, now we look at it as we have a lot of inventory. We have a lot of things. And, it's not like sports fans are going to look at it and be like, yeah, what's TNT doing in there? They're like, whoa, this is amazing. This is just like watching the game, right? So everybody wins. So I think being creative just is born out of literally and figuratively being hungry.
I love that. And one thing that pops into mind, you mentioned the growth, the timing of when you were there.
Oh, yeah.
But, and I know Munir has a story, but I'd love to hear both of you. What was your holy shit, this is big moment?
Oh my gosh. There's so many. Why don't you go first, Munir? Do you have a holy shit, this is big?
Well, I remember our work together, I was on college, did well, so I got promoted to the pros, and I got to work on Madden.
Mm-hmm.
And Madden was definitely big. And I remember that we were talking to some of the production team about how they were wanting to sign these licensing deals with brands so that their game could appear more realistic. And I had worked in advertising, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And I remember working then with Caroline and Allison Ross,
Mm-hmm.
and saying, and the three of us put together this presentation that said, listen, there's 5 billion impressions in Madden. If you think about the number of units sold, the number of times played, the average length of each time you play, which was all measured, it was studied, we should be getting ad revenue in, not licensing or paying out. And that was the flip moment where we started to, go, okay, this is for real, and this is big.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. And I think to your point, Rob, like we hit it right where, of course, PlayStation 1, it seems so funny now to think about it, but it went from a cartridge to a CD. So you could actually put real music in the game. And so the Sega Genesis cartridge days was my platform when I first cut my teeth. And that's where, we did the first Madden Bowl on that platform, and we were meeting lots of musicians and artists. In fact, the first Madden Bowl was only hip hop artists. It wasn't, NFL players didn't happen until the next year. But I say that because through our relationships and meeting, a lot of great artists, right, of that era that have aged well, right? Whether it's Tribe Called Quest or Hieroglyphics or all that same era, they loved EA Sports games. So by nature, we were the benefit of that. It's like, great, you love our games, but now we're going to be able to put real music in the game. So to Munir's point, like I remember producers like, oh, this is my favorite song. I'm going to pay $250,000, license this music, one song, and it's going to be in the game in the opening credits. Flip that to through relationship and the connection and people loving the brand. Jermaine Dupri out of Atlanta is playing Madden tournaments with Snoop and an A&R exec named Steve Prudhomme, who's been a great friend, and he's in the Madden documentary. He connects us, and I ask him, will you do the beats for Madden? It's going to be awesome, right? Same pitch, same foundation that Munir's talking about, impressions, etc. Yes, I'll do it. It'll be great. Oh, and I'm gonna put this artist I just signed on. His name's Chris Leva Leva. I'm like, okay, but just make sure you do the beats, right? Like, and then he comes back and he says, hey, that guy changed his name. And I'm thinking like, I care, but I really don't care. I want the beats that you produce. The game's going to be great. And he goes, okay, yeah, he changed his name to Ludacris. I'm like, okay. So Ludacris's first kind of public thing was on Madden and the soundtrack on Madden.
And he performed it live at Madden Bowl.
He did. He did perform it live at Madden Bowl. I think, that room, and you think about, I'm sure he probably performed at this year's Madden Bowl, right? And think about what that gap was over time. There's just so many stories and people who, because the games are so good, that we were able to use the product as a connection, right? And I think I really do think that's how really great brands are built. It's certainly great product, but product alone, it'll go far. But I think that combined with, if that product is a connection that brings people together, and they can share a bond around that product and shared stories and experiences, I think that's where you get the magic.
Absolutely. I mean, great product is easier to sell, but to your point, you can leverage it a lot more if it's great product. You have mentored so many people yourself. You've been a great mentor to me in my career. Who was your favorite mentor?
Well, if I think about, one mentor that really gave me a foundation and certainly gave me a leash and some philosophy to kind of live by, both professionally and personally, it's Don Transeth, for sure. So Don was the founder of the EA Sports brand, just kind of wrote the brief, shopped it around internally, got the producers to kind of start making games against a singular focus. I think Don certainly is, and he's a great friend still to this day. I talk to him a lot, and I think one thing that stood out to me that he had was around deposits and withdrawals, and this specifically was around brand deposits and brand withdrawals, and what he meant by that was, in everything you do, right? You better be making more deposits than withdrawals.
Yep.
Build equity into the brand. There's going to be some times that, you mess up and it's going to be a brand withdrawal. But you got to build up enough equity to be able to make those, mistakes at times. And I took that to heart and maybe reverse engineered it into the way I think about culture. Right? It's all, around culture, no matter what it is. Culture gets thrown around in a lot of different ways, or sometimes it only means something, a singular thing to people. But to me, culture, whether it's skate culture, surf culture, fishing culture, sports cultures, music, whatever it is, the same thing. You got to put in more deposits than withdrawals. Like, if you're going to be part of a culture, I think you got to be really thoughtful about how are you being additive to the culture, versus just taking.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
Go ahead, Mo.
You?
No.
No, go.
I was going to say that is a great segue to your tenure at Nike.
Yeah.
And because that is a brand that has bounced from defining the culture to catching up again and defining and catch it, which surely all brands go through, right?
Sure.
That require reinvention. What was your time there like?
It was absolutely amazing. From the fact that there were super highs and there were certainly, great learning and challenges too. So after 13 years at EA and the work that we collectively did, the brand got really hot, and I think people were looking at the brand, and I certainly, when I went to Nike, there were people who told me, like, yeah, we were looking at like sports brands, and we looked at you and we were like, how the hell are you guys doing that? Like, your point of view was like really, admirable. And so I got recruited to go to Nike. It was probably like a 3-year kind of courtship, because I loved EA. I loved EA Sports. I loved what we were doing. We had so much fun. I didn't know at the time, obviously, that it was relatively a really small organization. So when I did decide to pull the trigger and go to Nike and move our young family up to Portland, I landed at Nike in a pretty senior role. So I go from, like, to Munir's point, growing up in QA, customer support, being around, my guys and gals for 13 years, and all of a sudden I have a pretty big job with people who have been together for 20 years. Right? So you're definitely the outsider, right? Which is a whole new dynamic, but it's I kind of have to fall back on what we talked about, growing up. It's like, okay, hey, it's a new tribe, it's a new place. Like, how do I fit my way in here by being respectful, a good listener, all those kind of things that you learn along the way. And my first assignment was an assignment that had to be pretty stealth, and it was called Project Victoria. This is 2005, and it is the stealth project with Apple. So we named it Nike Plus. Is probably one of the first kind of digital sports performance products. A puck in your shoe.
Sure, yeah.
That talks to your Nano pre-iPhone, right? So I literally thought I was going to get fired in the first 2 weeks, because the running group was like, are you kidding me? Like, we're gonna make a product where runners listen to music. Like, real runners don't listen to music. And granted, the company's foundation is running, so
yeah,
respect. And here am I coming in new, and they're like, who is this video game guy? Like, runners don't run with music. And at the end of our agenda in this meeting, it says, okay, we're gonna go for a fun run. And I'm like, there's nothing fun about running. Like, I don't like running. Like, I'll run to play hoop longer, but I don't get what you mean by a fun run. And wearing headphones and listening to music, for the majority of people and athletes, they like it. Either, for me, it's deadening the pain, or it's motivating. So right. Combining those two worlds of hardcore runners who log their runs in a book, and people, the majority of the mainstream, who listen to music, like, how do we mash that up? Take existing behavior and mash it up. And so that project at Nike, Rob, was unbelievable, right? It really, for me, was my, on-ramp into Nike. For Nike, we didn't sell that. I mean, we sold the puck, but we didn't sell the service, right? It was you can come and have a relationship with Nike every day, see your run, how far you ran, log digitally, talk to your friends, have challenges. We really gamified that, right? First 1 to 50 miles wins, right?
Yeah. Strava.
Right? And people would wait until the last day, like, oh, I'm killing Munir. I got like 49 miles. I'm going to run tonight and smoke him. He's at like 5. And then before I get home, he freaking downloads all his miles and I lost. Right? So people were getting after it. But what it really did for Nike was take us from a mindset of being transactional. Like,
Right.
hey, we're gonna like make this badass commercial. We're gonna get you so hyped, and then we're gonna launch our shoe, and then we're like, come and get it, right? And great product, great brand, great vibe, but it's very transactional. To building a relationship with a consumer every day and not charging them. And I think that was also a lot of heat that I took too. Like, you're not charging them, we're giving it away for free, right? Like, people are hacking it and putting it in their tongues of their Brooks or Sauconys, and they can still use it. Well, yeah, and they're with us every day.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. And so, we saw through, sales and research that people were go maybe head to sock Nike, and it's really hard to get people to, change their running shoe. And certainly, Nike would admit, maybe not internally, but people would admit that's not the most hardcore running shoe. There's way more, specialty running shoes than Nike, but we actually did get people to kind of switch over to Nike, which was unheard of.
Yeah,
So
It's that deposit you're talking about.
it is a deposit. Like, think about it socially, or a brand, right? We're marketers, so we kind of think this way, or we talk this way. But really, it's like somebody who gives you something that really enhances your life. You're like, thanks. You're like,
Yeah.
thank you. Like, oh, this is cool. Oh, I'm not even paying for it. Right? I mean, maybe it's conscious, maybe it's subconscious, but like, yeah, we have running training runs with Nike Plus. Just go down to these running clubs, and we don't care if you have other brand shoes. Like, come for a run, track your run, right? And so, I think it is that whole mindset around, building relationships, and not just have it be transactional. Obviously, transactions, important to the bottom line, but you don't have to start there.
Right. This is we in the gifts to other marketers or young marketers. What are 3 things that are important for creativity? What are like for our listeners, for people that tune in? What are 3 things that people should take away to think about when they think about creativity? What are the important pieces?
I would say one is, certainly we talked about it a lot, or it came up a lot today, is just kind of curiosity. Like, be curious about, your product segment, be curious about the consumer, those kind of blocking and tackling things. I also think there's something about trying to get into the mindset of not being afraid to fail. Right? Not being
Yes.
afraid to fail, and knowing that, it is cliche, but, you learn more from failing than you do from, winning, right? So I think not being afraid to fail, I think being curious, and then just being really relentless about looking at existing behaviors or categories and seeing how you can mash them up,
Yeah.
right? Because I think a lot of really cool things have come together, whether it's music. Well, obviously music's one that's not easy, but it's right in front of you, how you can mix genres and come up with something really great. Or the Nike Plus example of like some hardcore runner, right, who logs their runs and miles in their book, and someone who's just like out for a run with music. Like, how do you mash that up, right?
Right.
I think the mashup part, especially in today's world, is not necessarily easier, but we're exposed to so much, right, that it's not such a hard verticals of, in music, country music, hip hop, rock, alternative, right? It used to be kind of hard lines. I mean, now there's probably like 15 genres of music in country.
Yeah.
And I think just being that mashup thing is something I always think about.
I love it. And this is a time on our show where we like to talk about thinking about mashups a little bit. But what's on your mixtape, Glenn? We have a theme: songs that embody sports, culture, and technology. We'd love to hear what's on your mixtape that brings those things together.
Yeah, you threw that out to me, and there's so many
So many
pieces of music, so many. But, the sports one, I say this to myself all the time that when it first came out, I was like, oh, this is sweet. This is so great. And it's, We Are the Champions by Queen, right? But it amazes me that to this day, that still gets played and there's not a replacement, right? There may be one shining moment in, for the NCAA tournament, but as far as like a sports anthem that's kind of stayed true, it may not be my most favorite song, but as far as like a sports song, I think about that for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Love it.
And then as far as culture, I think about my Bay Area roots, and I think about a underground hip hop band that went mainstream that has been so inspiring, I think, to a lot of artists over the decades, and they're still out there performing, and there's multi-generational fans, and that's the Hieroglyphics out of the East Bay, and they had a hit song called 93 Till. And I think that song really kind of mashed up genres. Certainly was hip hop, throughout the East Bay, Berkeley and Oakland. But they were really organically adopted by the skate, surf, snowboard world. Right. So I think, when you think about culture, I think it's really easy to put people in verticals and say, oh, culture, you mean it's this. And back then, right, and this is literally pre-internet, their sound, their point of view, and just as I think it's reflective of the Bay, like we talked about. It just has lots of different points of view and people, and for the most part, a lot of different types of people get along. So I think about them certainly for culture. And then as far as tech, this is a little strange because they do have tech in their style, but this song, they played their own instruments, and it's the Beastie Boys Sabotage, right? And I think about for tech and Sabotage, it's kind of an angsty break things song. And I do remember the background of it was that they were just pissed off at their producer of sabotaging their work or thinking that they were because they wanted more out of them. And when I think about tech, and that song, it is from that era of the 90s of, first round of .com and everything since then, and everything we have today, right, around tech is around trying things, mashing things up, and breaking them, right, and break it. Try to break it. Try to break it. Try to break it. Try to break it. It's not going to be perfect the first time. It's more about hurry up, fail fast, and iterate. So when I think about that, I think about, Sabotage.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, Munir, I kind of did a mashup in honor of Glenn without knowing it. It just so happens Glenn's talking about mashups. I kind of mashed all three together.
Let's hear it.
Let's go. All right. The first one, Blur, song 2. I was so sure that this was used in NHL 97. It was not, but it was used in FIFA 98. So Blur, song number 2, that was how they gave it to the label because it was kind of a jokey song. And it started, woohoo, I mean, everybody knows it when you hear it. And it's,
Yeah.
talk about anthemic. You know, you're not playing it after your win, but you're probably hearing it in a stadium even today. So I'm going with Blur. Nas Stillmatic, One Mic. And you could pick really almost any song off the album. But the reason I chose Nas Stillmatic was for a few reasons. One, even at that time, you didn't see hip hop artists with a career longevity because of whatever the layers of the music industry that didn't allow for it. But you essentially had one shot. And Nas with Stillmatic made his presence felt as now entrenching himself with a long career. It also was released in between Grand Theft Auto 3 and Grand Theft Auto Vice City. And as a 25, 26-year-old at the time who was binge playing those games, and by the way, those soundtracks and the radio stations and the music associated with those games were insane, I still would play Nas Stillmatic as I played the Grand Theft Auto franchise. So, and then number 3 is Wilco's Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, which is actually the same time period. And the reason why I bring this up is because their label had the audacity to drop them before the album dropped. And it actually was scheduled to be released on September 11th, 2001. And so, of course, they did not release it on September 11th. And because their label had dropped them, they actually did a digital stream of the album before it became commercially available for retail. And so it was one of those early albums that was made available online. And PS number 4, just shout out to Tiny Desk and the impact that this digital franchise has had to identifying new artists and falling in love with music all over again. Mac Miller was somebody who I didn't really listen to, but was exposed to after his Tiny Desk. He died a month later after the release of his Tiny Desk. And there's just so much that that franchise has done for the culture of music and for all of us to appreciate all kinds of different genres of music and allowing artists to express themselves in different ways, even in a new format. Shout out to Tiny Desk.
Well done. I'm going with Go Stetsa 1 by Stetsasonic, 1987, because growing up, that was a song that we listened to at basketball games. And I was on a plane going from somewhere to somewhere, and I saw these guys on the plane, and I walked up to them, and I was like, I love your music. And they could not believe that a kid that looked like me with his British mother in tow knew who the hell they were, let alone loved their music. And so Go Stetsa 1 for Stetsasonic. Love them. My next one is going to be Sandstorm by Darude. He's a Finnish DJ, released a song in 1999. You have heard this. It's a very, very techno beat. And it was brought to sports by this guy, Eric Nichols, at Vanderbilt, and then popularized at University of South Carolina. Driving techno beat you've heard at games. Maybe not the best song to like listen to, but played. And I'm trying to step through the eons. And then just the other day, there's this song called Storm 2 by Generation and Young Lean, who is a Swedish rapper. And Generation is a producer. And if you have not seen this video yet, it's been like all over the place. But it's a riff off these South African rugby war chants. And it's like a 7-minute long video. And it's about this British boarding school, and they're playing rugby in the video. But the last segment is this, like, the rapper is walking into the scene while he's rapping with beats behind it. And there's this incredible choreography in this stand-up of these kids who are dancing and taking their jackets on and off in front of a white shirt. So there's this incredible visual element to it as well. And to me, that combines sports, culture, and tech, because they're talk about a mashup of all those things. And it was like released a couple of weeks ago from when we're recording this. And so I have so many others that I pulled out just because, like, basketball, Curtis Blow, like, like there's all this stuff.
So many. So many.
But I cannot thank you enough for being with us, Glenn. I could talk to you
my pleasure.
Ever and ever.
I agree. I was like, we're skipping. We got to skip. Like, it was crazy, dude. A legend. Thank you.
Next time we'll read you a Virgil Abloh quote.
Oh, absolutely. Let's do it. Let's do it again, because we didn't even get to the good parts around, the fails, which there have been a lot of fails too. So
we would love to do it again.
Let's catch up again.
I'd love a part 2. Let's do it.
Okay.
And 3 and 4. Glenn, thank you so much, brother.
All right. Take care, guys.